I'm not supposed to be telling this story. For years I swore I never would, not because I was afraid of being mocked, but because I was afraid of being believed. People can handle lies, they can even handle half-truths, but the moment you show them what's really behind the curtain, something in their eyes changes. I saw that change once in my own reflection, on the night everything I thought I knew about God, time, and reality fell apart. My name is Ethan Cross, and I used to think I was just a man searching for a story. What I found instead was a message not meant for this world, given to me by something, or someone, that wasn't supposed to exist. It all began in the desert, somewhere along the cracked spine of Nevada, where the stars feel close enough to touch. Ethan Cross was a 38-year-old freelance journalist, worn out from chasing the same old lies disguised as headlines. He'd once been a believer, Sunday school, youth group, the whole thing, but years of covering human tragedy had burned out whatever faith he'd had left. The world had stopped making sense, and so had God. That was why one night in late September, he packed a bag, drove out past the last gas station in Rachel, Nevada, and headed into the desert looking for something he couldn't name. The air was thin and dry, the kind that makes your thoughts sound louder inside your head. The Milky Way glowed like a wound torn open across the sky. He pulled over near an abandoned chapel, half swallowed by sand, and sat on the hood of his truck, staring at the stars like a man begging them to speak. He didn't know it yet, but they were listening. Hours passed, the wind died. Then came the sound, a low, humming vibration that made his chest tighten, like standing too close to a generator. At first, he thought it was just the wind finding its way through the church windows. But then the ground beneath him began to tremble, not violently but rhythmically, like a heartbeat pulsing through stone. He stood up, his flashlight cutting through the dust, and that's when he saw it. A shape was descending from the sky, not fast, not bright, but quiet, deliberate, almost reverent. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't even metallic. It looked like a sphere made of mist and light, shifting colors like oil on water, and inside it he could see a silhouette, tall, lean, almost human but not quite. Ethan stumbled backward, heart hammering. His instincts screamed to run, but something, some deep, wordless pull, rooted him in place. The sphere touched the ground without a sound. The air around it shimmered with warmth, though the desert night was freezing. Then, with a sigh like wind leaving a cave, the light dissolved, and the being stepped out. It was not terrifying. In fact, it was beautiful in a way that made Ethan's stomach twist. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, with faint lines of light running beneath the surface like veins of fire. Its eyes were enormous, not alien black, but bright, like liquid gold, and when it looked at him, Ethan felt as though every thought he'd ever had was laid bare. "Do not fear," the being said, and its voice wasn't sound, it was vibration, resonating in his bones. Ethan stumbled back, whispering, "What are you?" The being tilted its head, almost curious. "You wouldn't understand that word," it said. "But I am here because you asked." "Asked what?" Ethan breathed. The being took a step closer, and with each step, the ground seemed to hum. "You asked if God still speaks," it said. Ethan froze. He had asked that, hours earlier, out loud, to no one, while staring at the stars. "I heard you," the being said softly, "and I came because the time for silence is ending." Ethan's knees nearly gave out. You're an angel?" he whispered. The being's golden eyes flickered with something that might have been sorrow. "No, I am not what your scriptures call angel. I am older than your names, but I serve the same light." "The light?" Ethan repeated, gripping his flashlight as if it could protect him. You mean God? The one you call God, it said, though not as you understand him. You have divided the infinite into fragments and then worshipped the pieces. Ethan felt his pulse racing. What does that even mean? The being raised one hand, and in the air between them appeared an image, not a hologram, not light, but memory itself projected into form. Ethan saw worlds, hundreds of them, orbiting different stars, each inhabited by beings made of light, flesh, energy. All creation, the being said, is part of one thought, the Word, the Christ, the infinite made visible. But your world, your kind forgot. Ethan couldn't move. The vision was too real, too vast. Forgot what? He whispered. That he did not come only to earth, the being said. The one you call Jesus walked among many worlds before yours. He is the living bridge between all that is bound by time and all that is not. And soon, the veil between these worlds will thin again. Ethan swallowed hard. You're saying Jesus was an alien? The being's expression did not change, but its eyes glowed brighter. He was what you will one day become, a being of both matter and light. He came here to awaken what sleeps inside you, not to build religion, but to remind you what you are. Ethan stared at the sand, trembling. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Because your kind is standing at the edge of time, the being said. And the future must be seen before it can be changed. Ethan looked up, breathless. Seen? You mean you can show me the future? The being's golden eyes softened. No, it said. I can teach you how to see it yourself. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. The words the being had spoken kept echoing in his head, circling like ravens over a battlefield. I can teach you how to see it yourself. The desert was still, but something in the air had changed. The silence felt alive now, like the world itself was holding its breath. The being stood at the edge of the chapel's ruins, looking up at the stars as if reading them. Its presence seemed to bend reality slightly. Even the wind avoided it. When Ethan finally found his voice, it came out trembling. Why me? The being didn't turn. Because you were broken enough to listen. That stung. I'm not broken, he said quickly. I'm just searching. All seekers are broken, it replied gently. Your kind builds walls of belief and calls them truth. You built one around your heart long ago. Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. Somehow this creature, whatever it was, could see everything he tried to hide. The failed marriage, the bottle of whiskey in his truck, the prayers he stopped saying when his mother died. The being extended its hand. Its fingers were long, the joints faintly luminescent, veins of light pulsing beneath its translucent skin. If you truly wish to see, it said, you must first unsee. Ethan frowned. Unsee what? Everything you were told was real. He hesitated, then stepped forward and placed his hand in the being's. The moment their skin touched, the world dissolved. The desert, the stars, the cold air, all gone. He was falling through light, surrounded by spirals of sound that weren't sounds at all, more like colors that hummed. He wanted to scream, but the fear was replaced by something else, clarity, like remembering something he had always known. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light condensed into a single scene. He was standing in what looked like ancient Jerusalem, but brighter, sharper, more alive than any history book could describe. The streets were full of people, not quite human, not quite angelic, radiant figures clothed in light and dust, their faces both familiar and strange. At the center of the crowd stood a man. Ethan knew him instantly, though he couldn't explain how. Jesus, but not the Jesus of paintings or Sunday sermons. This one's presence felt cosmic, like a sun wrapped in flesh. His eyes were endless, his voice the sound of gravity itself. "You see him," the being's voice whispered beside him, "but this is not your past. It is his eternal now." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. "He's real," he whispered. "He's real." "More real than you," the being said softly. "And he walks not only your world but many. The Christ is not one story told once. He is the story written across creation itself." Jesus turned then as if hearing them, and for a moment his eyes met Ethan's. The look was not judgment, not even surprise, just recognition, like he had always known Ethan would be there. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice failed. Then everything shattered, the crowd, the city, the light, folding inward like paper burning from its edges. He was back in the desert, gasping, the being still holding his hand. What was that?" he managed to say. "The beginning of sight," it answered. "You saw through time." Ethan stumbled backward. "That was impossible. I don't even understand what I saw." The being tilted its head. "You will. Time is not a line, Ethan Cross. It is a circle of mirrors. Each moment reflects the next. Those who learn to look through can change what has not yet come to pass." Ethan wiped his face, his mind spinning. "Change the future? How?" The being stepped closer. "By remembering it." "That doesn't make sense." "It will," it said, "when you accept what you are." "And what am I?" Ethan whispered. The being's golden eyes brightened. "A fragment of the word, a child of the light, as all your kind are. But you have forgotten your sight. You worshipped what was given to awaken you instead of awakening yourselves." Ethan felt anger rising, tangled with fear. "So you're saying everything I was taught, Jesus, the church, the Bible, it's all wrong?" "Not wrong," the being said. "Incomplete. Like a sentence missing its end. Your scriptures hold truth, but men chained it to power. The prophets saw glimpses of the cosmic Christ, but the institutions saw opportunity. They buried the stars beneath their temples." Ethan stared at it, shaking his head. "If what you're saying is true, why tell me? Why now?" The being looked east, toward the faint blush of dawn. "Because your world is about to forget again. And this time, forgetting will mean extinction." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "The timeline of your kind is fracturing," it said. "You are walking toward an end you cannot yet see. War born not of nations, but of belief. The light of faith has been twisted into shadow, and the shadow grows stronger each day. But those who learn to see beyond it can change what will come. You're saying I can stop it? You can begin to." "How?" The being reached into the air and pulled something from it, a sphere of dim light, swirling like a living memory. "Hold this," it said. Ethan took it hesitantly. The sphere felt both weightless and impossibly heavy, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What is it?" he asked. "A seed of vision," the being said. "Plant it in silence. It will grow when you are ready to see again." Ethan stared at the sphere, light reflecting in his eyes. "And if I fail?" The being's expression softened, almost human. "Then the future you saw tonight will become your past." A cold wind swept through the desert. When Ethan looked up again, the being was gone. Only a faint shimmer of light lingered where it had stood, dissolving into the dawn. He stood there for a long time, clutching the sphere, the horizon burning with the first red rays of morning. He didn't know it yet, but his life, the world itself, had just begun to unravel. Ethan drove for hours without knowing where he was going. The desert highway stretched endlessly in front of him, the morning light flashing across the windshield like the pulse of something alive. He couldn't stop replaying what had happened. The being's voice, the vision of Jesus that felt more real than memory, the strange sphere of light now resting in the glove compartment beside a half-empty water bottle. Every few minutes he glanced at it, half afraid it would vanish, half hoping it would. The farther he drove, the more his thoughts tangled between faith and fear. Had he lost his mind? Maybe he'd fallen asleep out there, hallucinated the whole thing from exhaustion, but the ache in his hand from where the being had touched him said otherwise. His phone had no signal, his compass spun without direction, and even the radio was dead. It was as if he'd been cut off from the world entirely. When he finally reached the small town of Caliente, the streets were nearly empty. He parked outside a diner and stumbled in, the smell of coffee and fried eggs grounding him for the first time in hours. A waitress with silver hair looked up. "Rough night, honey?" she said. "You could say that," he muttered. He ordered black coffee and sat in the corner booth, staring out the window. The sun burned bright, but it felt cold somehow, distant. He needed answers, anything that could make sense of what he'd seen. He opened his laptop and typed, "Interdimensional beings, Christ connection," then paused. The results were a mix of conspiracy blogs, UFO forums, and religious essays about fallen angels. None of it felt right. None of it matched what he'd experienced. Then, almost without thinking, he pulled out the sphere. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat under glass. A child in the next booth gasped. "Cool toy," the boy said, peering over the seat. Ethan quickly covered it. "Not a toy," he murmured. "Just something I found." But when he looked back at the sphere, something strange happened. The reflection on the diner window shifted. For a split second, the street outside was gone, replaced by darkness, and in that darkness, shapes moved. Human shapes, people standing in lines, faces blank, hands clasped like they were praying or waiting. Then the vision vanished. The waitress refilled his cup, oblivious. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Maybe I have." He shoved the sphere back into his jacket pocket and left cash on the table. As he stepped outside, his phone buzzed for the first time since the night before, a voicemail. No caller ID. He pressed play. The voice on the other end was faint, distorted by static, but unmistakable. "You are not supposed to see it yet," the voice said. "They are watching now. Do not return to the desert." Ethan froze. "Who is this?" he whispered, but the message had already ended. He looked around. Cars passed, people walked, but everything suddenly felt staged, like actors on a set. A cold certainty crept into his gut. Someone, or something, knew what had happened. He climbed back into the truck and drove toward the nearest motel. Inside the room, the air smelled of dust and chlorine. He set the sphere on the table, staring at it like a ticking bomb. "Teach me," he said quietly, though he didn't know who he was speaking to. The light pulsed once. Brighter this time, and a faint whisper filled the room, not through his ears, but inside his mind. "Sight is not given. It is remembered." Ethan backed away, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he demanded. No answer, only another whisper, "Close your eyes." Against his better judgment, he did. Instantly, the darkness behind his eyelids wasn't darkness at all. It was space, infinite, swirling with galaxies, and at the center, a blinding light that pulsed like the rhythm of all creation. The whisper came again, layered with countless voices speaking as one. "The future is not ahead of you. It is within you. The moment you believe, you begin to write it. What does that mean? Ethan said. The light expanded, filling his vision until there was nothing left but white. Then scenes began to flicker across it like film. Cities burning, oceans rising, people turning against each other in the name of faith. He saw churches collapsing, governments crumbling, skies turning red. But amid the chaos he saw something else, beings of light descending, touching the earth, awakening people with a single glance, humanity rising again, not through war, but through understanding. This is what's coming, he whispered. It depends on what you choose to see, the voice replied. Suddenly the images changed. Now he was standing before a massive wall covered in symbols, ancient and glowing. His hand reached toward it, and as his fingers brushed the carvings, they shifted, forming words he could understand. The kingdom is not above you, nor below you. It is within. The light flickered, then vanished. Ethan gasped, opening his eyes. The room was dark now, though it was still midday outside. The sphere's glow had dimmed to almost nothing. He reached for it, but it was cold now, inert, as if it had died. He sat down, trembling, trying to steady his breath. That was when he heard a knock on the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. He froze. The knock came again. "Mr. Cross," a voice called, calm and measured. "We'd like to speak with you about what you witnessed last night." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Who's we?" Silence. Then the voice said, "The ones who tried to warn you." Ethan glanced at the sphere, then at the door. Whoever they were, they already knew. And the realization hit him like ice. The being wasn't the only one watching him now. Ethan didn't move. The voice outside the motel door was calm, rehearsed, the kind used by people who didn't need to explain who they were. Every instinct told him to run. He backed away from the door, eyes darting toward the bathroom window. The voice came again, gentle, almost patient. "We're not here to harm you, Mr. Cross, but you've seen something that wasn't meant for the public. Open the door, and we'll explain." Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. He didn't know what terrified him more, the idea that these people might be government agents, or that they might be something else entirely. Slowly, he edged toward the window, slid it open and climbed out into the alley behind the motel. The air outside was stifling. He crouched low, moving between trash bins, his heart pounding. When he looked back, 2 men in dark suits were stepping into his room through the open door. They didn't look like locals. Too polished, too deliberate. They began searching immediately. One checked the table where the sphere had been. Ethan's stomach sank. The sphere was gone. He didn't remember taking it. He didn't remember leaving it. And now it had vanished as if it had never existed. He slipped out to the truck and drove. The highway blurred past, his mind spinning. Every shadow in the mirror looked like movement. Every passing car felt like surveillance. He tried to breathe, to think, but all he could hear was the being's voice echoing inside him. The future must be seen before it can be changed. After nearly an hour of driving, he pulled into a roadside chapel, a weathered wooden structure that looked abandoned, its steeple cracked, its sign faded. Inside, dust floated through beams of sunlight like falling ash. He sat in the last pew and let his head fall into his hands. "God," he whispered, "if you're still there, what am I supposed to do?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, alive, as though the air itself was waiting. Then he heard a sound, soft footsteps behind him. He turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Her clothes were simple, her hair dark, her eyes the color of amber. "You're Ethan," she said, not as a question. "Who are you?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Someone who saw what you saw." Ethan frowned. "The being?" Yes, she said. It's been appearing to others. Not many, but enough to draw attention. Attention from who? Those men? She nodded. They call themselves the Directorate. They work under the guise of a federal program, but they're something else entirely. They've been monitoring sightings like yours for decades. Ethan stared. You're telling me this thing has been visiting people for years? Centuries, she said. But most forget. The message fades, replaced by fear or denial. You're one of the few who remembers clearly, and that makes you dangerous to them. I don't even understand what it showed me, Ethan said. Visions, voices, how am I supposed to make sense of that? The woman stepped closer, her expression softening. It's not about understanding, it's about remembering what you were shown. The being doesn't reveal the future, it reminds you of it. Every soul carries echoes of what's to come. You just learned how to listen. Ethan shook his head. I'm not special, I'm just a journalist who got lost in the desert. Exactly, she said. You went searching, that's why it found you. It always finds those who've stopped pretending they already know the truth. Her words sank into him like a weight. What does it want from me? He asked. She hesitated, glancing toward the sunlight spilling across the altar. It wants you to tell the world that time isn't linear, that salvation isn't a destination, that the return of Christ isn't something that happens to humanity. It happens through it. Ethan felt a chill run through him. Through us? Yes, she said. When the divine awakens inside enough people, the veil between worlds will fall. That's the second coming. Not a sky splitting open, but hearts remembering who they are. He stared at her, trying to process it. You sound like the being, he whispered. I should, she replied, because it once spoke to me too. Silence filled the chapel. Dust drifted between them like slow rain. Then help me, he said finally. Help me understand what's happening. She nodded. You saw what's coming, cities burning, faith turning to war. But that's not prophecy, it's potential. The future is written in probabilities, and your choices shift them. Then how do I change it? He asked. She looked at him, her eyes glinting with light that didn't belong to this world. By seeing the truth that fear hides, she said, you can't change what you refuse to look at. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the chapel's front door creaked open. Two figures stepped inside, men in black suits, the same from the motel. The woman's face hardened. They followed you, she whispered. Go now. What about you? I'll stall them. But go, Ethan, she hissed, eyes flashing with sudden brilliance, as if light itself flared from within her. The men froze mid-step, momentarily blinded. Ethan didn't wait. He ran out the side door, sprinting toward his truck as the sound of shattering glass echoed behind him. He started the engine, tires kicking up dust, and sped down the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, he saw the chapel erupt in a burst of light so bright it turned the sky white for a heartbeat. And then it was gone. Nothing left but a blackened silhouette where the building had stood. Ethan gripped the wheel, shaking. Whatever this was, it was no longer just a vision or message. It was war. Ethan drove until the sun went down and the sky turned violet. His mind was on fire, replaying the explosion again and again. The light swallowing the chapel, the woman's eyes glowing like living stars. None of it made sense. None of it could be real. And yet, deep down, he knew it was. He pulled off the highway and stopped at a rest area overlooking the desert. The world around him felt too quiet, as if even nature was afraid to speak. He stepped out of the truck and leaned against the hood, the cold air biting his skin. The night was clear, the stars sharp and endless. Why me? He whispered to the sky. What am I supposed to do? The wind carried no answer, but something stirred inside him, a low hum, faint but familiar. He opened the glove compartment. The sphere was there again, faintly glowing as if it had never been gone. He stared at it, heart thudding. "Where have you been?" he said softly. The hum grew louder, resonating through his bones. Then he heard a voice, not the alien's, but hers, the woman from the chapel. "Do not run. Ethan, it's not over." He froze, clutching the sphere. "Where are you?" he whispered. No response, only silence and a strange warmth spreading through his chest. He placed the sphere on the hood and watched as it began to shift, its surface rippling like water. Slowly, an image formed inside it, a face. Hers. Her expression was calm, almost radiant, though her voice trembled slightly. "I don't have much time," she said. "They know where you are." "Who are they?" Ethan demanded. "Who are those men?" "Not men," she said. "They were once human, but now they serve the Directorate's design, to keep humanity blind. They call it protection, but what they really guard is control." "Control over what?" "Over what people believe," she said. "Over how they see God." Her image flickered. "Ethan, listen carefully. The being that came to you, the one who showed you the vision, its kind has been trying to awaken humanity for thousands of years, but every time they appear, fear buries the message. The church labeled them demons, governments called them threats, and people like the Directorate made sure the truth never spread." "And the truth is what?" he asked. "That Jesus was one of them?" "No," she said, "that he was beyond them. Even they don't fully understand him. He was not from one world. He was from all of them. The Christ energy, the living word, it flows through every dimension, every being capable of love." That's what the scriptures tried to describe before men turned it into religion. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Why tell me this? What am I supposed to do with it?" "You're a storyteller," she said. "That's why it chose you. Not to preach, but to witness, to show the world what it's forgotten, that salvation isn't about escape. It's about remembrance." "Remembrance of what?" "Of what you truly are," she said. "You were made in his image, not as flesh and bone, but as co-creators of time itself. Humanity was meant to shape the future, not suffer through it." Ethan's chest tightened. "And the war I saw, the chaos, can it still be stopped?" "Yes," she said, "but only if enough of you see before it begins. You must find the others, the ones he's already called." "Others like me?" She nodded. "We've been scattered across the world, each carrying a fragment of the same vision. Together, those fragments form the map, the prophecy rewritten." The sphere's glow dimmed, her image fading. "Wait," he said. "Where do I find them?" Her voice was soft now, fading with the light. "Follow the pattern of threes, it will lead you home." Then the sphere went dark. Ethan stood there for a long time, staring at his reflection in the black glass. Pattern of threes. What did that mean? The hum of an approaching engine broke his thoughts. He turned sharply, headlights in the distance, moving fast down the empty road. His instincts screamed, "Run!" He grabbed the sphere, jumped into the truck, and hit the gas. The vehicle roared to life, tires spitting gravel. The lights behind him grew larger, closer. Whoever they weren't random travelers. The road twisted into the desert, and Ethan took a sharp turn onto a dirt path leading toward the mountains. The pursuing car followed. Dust and moonlight blurred into a storm around him. He gripped the wheel tighter, his mind racing. Come on," he muttered. Then, without warning, the sphere in the passenger seat began to glow, blinding,
pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. The truck's dashboard lights flickered, the radio crackled, and a burst of static filled the cab. A voice broke through it, the alien's voice, calm and resonant. "You are not running from them. You are running toward what you must see." "Then show me," Ethan shouted. The sphere flared with light, and in an instant the truck was gone. No crash, no explosion, just silence. The car chasing him screeched to a stop, headlights sweeping across an empty dirt road. The truck had vanished into thin air. Ethan blinked against the blinding white that surrounded him. He wasn't on the road anymore. He stood on a plateau of smooth stone under a sky filled with 3 suns. The air shimmered with gold and violet light. The alien was there.
Standing on the edge of the horizon, waiting. "Where am I?" Ethan whispered. "Where you needed to be," it said. "Beyond the line of your world's time." Ethan looked around, stunned. "Is this heaven?" The being's golden eyes softened. "No, this is memory, the memory of what you were before you forgot." The ground beneath them began to pulse with light, and suddenly the symbols he had seen in his vision reappeared. Spirals, crosses, circles within circles, all glowing, all alive. The being looked at him. "The pattern of 3s, it said. "Body, soul and spirit, earth, heaven and what lies between. You must learn to see how they connect, or your world will fall into shadow." Ethan stared at the symbols as they began to shift and merge, forming something like a doorway made of light. "What's on the other side?" he asked.
The being stepped aside. "The truth," it said, "and the one who waits to show it to you." Ethan hesitated at the threshold of light. The air around the doorway pulsed, alive, vibrating with a frequency that seemed to call his name. Every instinct screamed that crossing it would mean no return, but something deeper, a pull that felt ancient, familiar, urged him forward. The alien watched silently, golden eyes unwavering, as if measuring his courage. "If I step through," Ethan said, "what happens to me?" The being's expression was unreadable. "You will remember." "Remember what?" "Who you've always been." The words struck him harder than any warning could. He looked back once. No desert, no truck, just endless space stretching like an ocean of light. Then he stepped through. The world folded around him, collapsing into sound and color.
And when it unfolded again, he stood in a place that looked like earth, and yet not. The sky was gold, the air thick with melody, and beneath his feet was not soil, but luminous dust that shimmered with every step. Mountains rose like cathedrals, carved not by erosion, but by intention. Rivers of light flowed between them, singing in a language his soul understood, though his mind did not. A voice spoke behind him, calm, resonant, neither male nor female. "You have crossed into the memory of creation." He turned, but it wasn't the alien. The figure standing before him was human, or something close. Tall, robed in white that seemed woven from the light itself. Its face glowed faintly, but its eyes, those eyes, felt infinite. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. The figure smiled, and the light around it seemed to breathe. "The first of your kind who learned to see." "See what?" "The pattern," it said simply, "the same one you were shown." It raised its hand, and suddenly Ethan was surrounded by moving images, earth through ages, spinning through birth, growth, decay. Civilizations rising and falling, prophets speaking, wars igniting. But there were also flashes of other worlds, different skies, different suns, all touched by the same light. "What you call prophecy," the figure said, "is memory carried forward. The future is simply the past remembered in advance." Ethan watched, speechless, as one image lingered longer than the rest. A vision of Jesus walking along the shore of a world with two moons. The water glowed beneath his feet, and beings of light knelt before him. "That's not Earth," Ethan whispered. "No," the figure said softly. But his words there were the same. "The kingdom of heaven is within you. The Christ walks where life breathes, wherever love exists. He is not bound by stars or distance." Ethan's throat tightened. "So every world, every being out there, knows him?" "Not all, remember," the figure said, "but all are part of him. Creation is not separate from its creator. It is his reflection. But your kind has forgotten this truth. You turned the mirror into an idol." Ethan's heart pounded. "And the alien, the being that came to me, it said the veil between worlds is thinning. Is that what this is?" The figure's expression darkened slightly. "Yes, the alignment has begun. Every cycle, the realms draw near, and with them comes choice, awakening or collapse. Humanity stands at that crossroads now." "Collapse?" Ethan echoed. "You saw it," the figure said. "The wars, the division, the hunger for power masked as faith. Each time humanity forgets its unity, the shadow grows. You call it apocalypse, but apocalypse means unveiling. It is not destruction, it is revelation. What must fall will fall so truth can rise." Ethan took a step closer. "Then tell me how to stop it. Tell me what I have to do." The figure looked at him with something like compassion. "You cannot stop what is meant to reveal, but you can guide what emerges after." "How?" "By seeing the future as a story still being written and reminding others they are its authors." Ethan shook his head. "That's not enough. I saw cities burning, people dying. If this is supposed to be God's plan, why so much pain?" The figure's light flickered softer now. "Pain is the echo of separation. It is what you feel when you forget you are one with the source. Even the Christ felt it. He wept because he remembered the unity you lost. Then why doesn't he stop it?" "Because to stop it would be to take your freedom," the figure said. "And love without freedom is not love, it is slavery." Ethan closed his eyes, tears pressing against them. "I just want to understand," he said. "You already do," the figure replied. "You've always known. You are part of the same story you're trying to write." When he opened his eyes, the figure was gone. In its place stood a mirror, tall and curved like a gate. The reflection staring back at him wasn't quite his own. It was him, but brighter, eyes lit with the same golden hue as the alien's. His reflection spoke in his voice, but layered with another, deeper, older. "You are both the witness and the messenger," it said, "the seeing and the seen. What you do next determines what your world becomes." The mirror rippled like water, and Ethan's reflection reached out its hand. For a moment he hesitated. Then he took it. Light swallowed him again, blinding, weightless, endless. When it faded, he was lying on the ground beside his truck in the desert, dawn breaking on the horizon. The sphere rested on the sand beside him, glowing softly. He sat up, shaking, unsure how long he'd been gone, minutes, hours, days. But something was different. The world felt sharper, clearer, as if every rock, every gust of wind carried meaning. He picked up the sphere, whispering, "Was it real?" A familiar voice answered, soft and resonant, the alien's. "Reality is what remembers you." Ethan closed his eyes. The hum returned, not around him, but within. He could feel it now, the pulse of something vast moving through him like a current. And in that moment he understood. Seeing the future wasn't about predicting what would come, it was about remembering what love had always intended. When Ethan returned to town, it felt like walking through the shell of a forgotten dream. The streets were the same, the people the same, but everything carried a faint echo, as if reality itself had been thinned, hollowed by what he now knew. He drove past the diner where he'd spent nights chasing meaningless stories, past the church where the pastor once told him, "Faith isn't found in proof." He understood now how blind that had sounded. Faith wasn't the absence of proof. It was the memory of something humanity had forgotten. His hands trembled as he parked near his apartment. For hours he sat in the truck, the sphere pulsing quietly on the seat beside him, like a living heart. He felt afraid to touch it again, not because of what it would do, but because of what it had already changed in him. When he finally stepped out, the morning sun painted everything in gold. He blinked against it, hearing a faint whisper that wasn't sound but meaning. "Remember what you saw." Inside his apartment, everything felt smaller. His walls were lined with newspaper clippings, old case notes, photos of strange lights, cult leaders and ruins. Once they were his trophies, proof that the world was stranger than people believed. Now they just looked like fragments of a much larger picture he had only begun to see. The sphere pulsed once, faintly, then dimmed. He placed it on the table and stared at it. "You said I'd remember," he whispered, "but I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with this." No answer came, just the sound of the city outside, car horns, dogs barking, life moving on. He felt an ache then, deep and nameless, like homesickness for a place he'd never been. Later that night, as the wind pressed against his window, he dreamed of the desert. The alien stood there again, beneath the bleeding sunset, its form more human now, almost familiar. "You brought me back," Ethan said. "Why?" The alien's voice echoed like distant thunder. "You were chosen to see, not to escape. You must tell them what you saw." "No one will believe me," Ethan said. "They never do." "Belief is not required," the being replied. "Truth remembers itself through those who carry it. Speak it aloud, and it will awaken." Ethan frowned. "You want me to preach?" The alien's gaze was calm, steady. "Not preach, reveal. Show them what is already written on their hearts. Tell them that time is mercy, that all who seek will remember." "Remember what?" Ethan asked. "That salvation is not escape from Earth. It is awakening to its purpose." The alien stepped closer, and Ethan saw that its face was shifting, rippling through different forms: man, woman, child, angel, even his own reflection. "You are all the same dream," it said, "all born of the same breath. The Christ you know came to remind you of that unity, but your world turned his message into walls." Ethan woke suddenly, heart pounding. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the sphere. He sat up, drenched in sweat. His phone buzzed on the table, a notification from his editor. "Where are you? We got a lead on that church in Arizona, the one connected to the missing researcher. Call me." For a long moment he just stared at the screen. Then something clicked. The researcher, Dr. Morgan, had vanished 2 months ago while investigating an alleged celestial artifact. In the same region, Ethan had found the sphere. Coincidence? He didn't believe in those anymore. He dressed quickly, threw some things in a bag, and hit the road before dawn. As he drove across the empty highway, the radio cut through static with a preacher's voice. "The end times draw near," it said, "but not as you think. The veil between worlds thins, and false light will walk among men." Ethan turned it off, shivering. False light. The words echoed what he'd heard in the desert, but, from the other voice, the one that warned him before the alien appeared. Could it be that what he met wasn't what it claimed to be? That thought gnawed at him. He wanted to trust what he saw, what he felt, but how did one measure truth against deception when both spoke in light? By the time he reached Arizona, his mind was unraveling between faith and doubt. The old church stood at the edge of nowhere, crumbling, half swallowed by the sand. Its roof sagged, the stained glass broken, yet the place radiated an odd stillness, as if it remembered prayer. He stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The air smelled of dust and age. Crosses hung askew, their faces cracked. In the center of the room lay a circle of burned symbols, blackened into the floor. His light flickered. Then, faintly, he heard a voice. Not from outside, but inside him. "You were here before?" The words struck something deep, a memory not his own. He knelt, tracing the charred markings. They pulsed faintly beneath his touch. He blinked, and for a split second, the church was no longer ruin. It was alive. Candles burned. Voices sang in languages older than history. And at the altar stood a man cloaked in light, holding a sphere identical to his. Ethan gasped, and the vision shattered. He stumbled back, falling hard against a pew. His flashlight clattered to the floor. When he picked it up, the beam caught something etched into the wood. 3 words, carved by a trembling hand: "He will return." Suddenly the sphere in his pocket began to hum, louder than before, vibrating with urgency. He pulled it out, and light spilled across the walls. The symbols on the floor ignited again, alive with gold. The church trembled, and in that roaring light he heard the alien's voice, not distant this time, but near, inside his own chest. "Ethan, the future is calling you." The light grew until the world dissolved into brilliance. His last thought before it consumed him was not fear, but recognition. When the light faded, Ethan was no longer in the church. He stood instead in a vast field under a sky that rippled like water, stars moving as if alive. The air hummed with a low vibration that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming again, but then he felt the grass beneath his hands, warm and real. Ahead, a figure stood waiting. It was the alien, though now its form had changed. It looked almost human, clothed in simple garments of woven light, eyes deep and endless as galaxies. "Where am I?" Ethan asked,
voice trembling. "Between," the being replied. "Between your world and the one you saw, between memory and revelation." Ethan took a shaky step closer. "Why me? Why show me all of this?" The alien's expression softened. "Because you looked for truth without deciding what it had to be. That is rare among your kind." "I didn't ask to be a prophet," Ethan said. "I just wanted answers." "Then you have received them," the being said quietly. "But answers are never the end. They are invitations." Ethan shook his head. "Invitations to what?" "To responsibility, to remembrance, to creation." The words hung in the air like chords of music. "You have seen what is coming, Ethan, not as punishment, but as the unfolding of choice. Humanity stands at the threshold of its own awakening. You must decide whether to open the door." Ethan's chest tightened. "I don't understand. What door?" The being gestured, and the sky itself split open, not violently, but like silk, parting to reveal light beyond light. Ethan saw Earth suspended there, small and fragile, surrounded by threads of gold stretching out into infinity. Each thread connected to other worlds, other realms, pulsing like veins of divine fire. "Every soul," the being said, "is a thread in this tapestry. Together, you form the living image of God, but when you forget your connection, the weave unravels. Fear replaces love, control replaces faith. You build towers instead of temples. The vision shifted. He saw cities collapsing under storms of flame, nations turning on one another, people staring into glowing screens while their hearts grew hollow. This is one possible future, the alien said.
The future born of forgetting. And the other? Ethan asked, his voice small. The alien raised its hand again. The vision changed, fields flourishing, children laughing beneath skies of blue, people embracing across borders, light flowing through every living thing. This is the future of remembrance, the being said, the return to oneness, the resurrection not of a man, but of the truth he carried. Ethan's throat burned. Jesus, he whispered, you're saying he wasn't just human? He was what humanity could be, the alien replied. The first to remember fully who he was. The Christ was not born in one man alone. He is the awakening of all minds to the same spirit. Then why didn't he just tell us that? Ethan said, half angry, half pleading. He did, the alien answered gently.
But words become chains in the hands of those who fear freedom. His message was transformed into doctrine so that men could control what they could not comprehend. Ethan turned away, struggling to breathe. So, the church, the Bible, all of it, lies. Not lies, the being said. Fragments, reflections seen through fog. The truth is not in the letter, but in the light behind it. Ethan fell to his knees, clutching his head. How am I supposed to tell anyone this? They'll think I've lost my mind. Perhaps you must lose it, the alien said softly. Only then can you see beyond it. He looked up, tears streaking his face. Why me? Because you asked the question no one dares to ask, the being replied. Not what is true, but why do I want truth? That longing is what opens the door. The alien stepped closer until Ethan could feel its warmth. Ethan Cross, you are not chosen because you are special. You are chosen because you chose to see. The sky shimmered again, and the visions began to fade. Wait, Ethan said, reaching out. Don't leave me like this. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. The alien looked at him with something like love. Do what all who awaken must do, it said. Remember and remind others. That's it. That is everything. The being's light began to dissolve, scattering like dust into the air. But just before it vanished, it whispered, and when they ask how you know the future, tell them this, because I have already seen it, and it was love. The field dimmed, the hum faded. Ethan felt himself falling.
Spinning through stars, through darkness, through his own heartbeat. He gasped as his body hit solid ground. He was back in the church again, the sun streaming through broken glass. The sphere lay beside him, dim and cold. For a moment he thought it had all been a vision, until he saw what was burned into the wooden floor beside him. A single word glowing faintly like an ember. Remember. Ethan stared at it, his pulse hammering. Outside, the wind carried a strange sound, like whispers rising from every direction, speaking his name. The future wasn't coming, it was already here. And he was part of it. Ethan stumbled out of the church into the blazing desert sun, clutching the sphere to his chest. His vision swam as he tried to process what had just happened. The sky looked sharper now, as though the veil that once dulled its colors had been lifted. Even the wind sounded different, alive, whispering fragments of thought that dissolved before he could grasp them. He walked aimlessly for hours until he reached the highway, dust sticking to his clothes, his mind unraveling between faith and madness. Cars passed, drivers staring at the wild-eyed man who looked like he'd been dragged out of another world. Eventually, a truck slowed and stopped. The driver, an older man with a grey beard and kind eyes, leaned out. "You all right, son?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, my car broke down." The man looked unconvinced, but opened the door anyway. "Hop in. Nearest town's 30 miles. As the truck rumbled along, Ethan watched the horizon shimmer. The world felt unfamiliar, like a dream he couldn't wake from. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the driver said. Ethan managed a small, bitter laugh. "Something like that." "You out here for work?" "You could say that." He paused. "I'm a journalist." "Ah," the driver nodded. "So, chasing stories." No, Ethan murmured. "This one chased me." The driver chuckled softly, but something in Ethan's tone silenced him. After a long stretch of silence, he spoke again. "You know, strange things happen out here. Folks see lights, hear voices. They say it's the desert talking." Ethan turned toward him. "And what do you think?" The old man shrugged. "I think God talks to all of us, but most folks don't listen unless he shouts." Ethan looked out the window. "Then he's shouting at me." The man said nothing after that. When they reached the edge of a small town, Ethan thanked him and stepped out, promising to wire some money later. The driver only nodded, tipped his hat, and drove off. Ethan wandered into a diner. The bell above the door jingled softly. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, smiled faintly. "Coffee?" "Please," Ethan said, sliding into a booth. As she poured, he caught his reflection in the window. His eyes looked different, brighter, like something was burning behind them. He took a sip, trying to steady his hands, but the cup rattled against the saucer. His phone buzzed again. It was his editor. He hesitated, then answered. "Ethan, where the hell have you been?" a rough voice barked. "I've been trying to reach you for days." "I've been out of signal," Ethan said. "I found something, Mark. Something big." "Don't tell me you're chasing another alien story." Ethan swallowed hard.
It's not just a story. Ethan, you sound crazy. Come back to LA. We'll talk it out. You've been through too much. "I can't," Ethan said softly. "I have to finish this." He hung up before Mark could reply. He stared at his reflection again. For a moment, it wasn't his face staring back. It was the alien's. Eyes gold, calm, eternal. He blinked, and it was gone. The waitress stopped nearby, concern etched in her face. "You okay, honey?" He nodded quickly. "Just tired." She smiled sympathetically. "Well, you look like you've been through hell. Sometimes we don't know what we're looking for until it finds us." Ethan froze. The words hit him like lightning. "What did you just say?" She blinked, startled. "I said, sometimes what we're looking for finds us. Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he fumbled for his wallet, threw a 20 on the table, and walked out. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in bruised shades of red and violet. He could feel the hum again, deep inside his chest. He pulled the sphere from his pocket. It was glowing faintly, responding to something unseen. "What are you trying to show me?" he whispered. The answer came not in sound, but in memory. The alien's voice, calm and patient. "The future isn't shown, it's remembered." He looked toward the horizon and saw them. Lights moving slowly above the desert floor, silent and deliberate. Not planes, not drones. They moved in patterns, circles, triangles, spirals. His pulse quickened. He followed them, stumbling through the sand until he reached a ridge. Below, in a shallow basin, stood a circle of figures, not human, luminous shapes, like beings carved from starlight,
each holding a sphere like his. They faced a central pillar of fireless light. It pulsed, alive, communicating without words. Ethan fell to his knees, awe, overwhelming fear. He understood then, these weren't visitors. They were witnesses. Watchers of creation, gathering where the veil between worlds was thinnest. The light from their spheres merged into the pillar, sending a beam skyward. Ethan watched, trembling, as symbols appeared in the air, ancient, shifting, written in light. He couldn't read them, but their meaning pressed into his mind. The remembering has begun. One of the beings turned toward him, its face neither alien nor human, but something beyond both. "You see us now because your world is awakening," it said. But awakening brings division. Light reveals what darkness hid. "You must speak before the shadow does." "What shadow?" Ethan asked. The being pointed toward the horizon. "Those who serve fear. They know the veil is lifting, and they will use it to enslave minds. Their light will blind, not reveal." "How do I stop them?" Ethan demanded. "By remembering that truth does not fight, it endures." The beings began to fade, dissolving into streaks of gold that rose into the heavens. The pillar flickered and then collapsed into a single, glowing spark that shot upward and vanished among the stars. Ethan was left alone in the dark, the desert wind howling like a voice that mourned and warned at once. He fell forward, exhausted, the sphere clutched tightly in his hand. He knew now what the alien meant. Seeing the future wasn't about visions or prophecy, it was about awareness. The future was already written in the choices of the present, and the time for choice had come. Next morning, Ethan woke on the desert floor, his clothes stiff with sand and dew, the sun already rising like a silent witness. His throat was dry, his mind fogged, but the memory of what he'd seen, those luminous beings, the pillar of light, the warning was seared into him like fire. He sat up slowly, clutching the sphere. It no longer glowed. It was as dull and grey as stone. For the first time, he wondered if it had given him everything it could, if its silence now meant the rest was up to him. He drove back to Los Angeles through an ocean of dust and disbelief, rehearsing what he might tell the world. But every time he tried to form the words, the alien showed me the truth about Jesus, the future, and humanity's destiny. They crumbled on his tongue. Who would believe him? His editor? The church? The scientists who already mocked his articles? The truth was too big for language, too fragile for argument. By the time he reached the city, twilight had fallen. The skyline shimmered with neon and smoke, and for a fleeting second it looked to him like a dying star, brilliant, blind, unaware of its collapse. He parked outside his apartment and just sat there, watching people move like ghosts beneath the streetlights. Everyone looked tired, everyone looked lost. He saw it then. The same fog he used to live in, the blindness of forgetting. And suddenly he understood why the alien had chosen him. Not because he was brave, but because he was broken enough to listen. Inside, he turned on his recorder. His hands shook as he began to speak. "This is Ethan Cross," he said. "I don't know where to begin. What I am about to tell you, it sounds impossible, but I've seen it, I've lived it, and you deserve to know." He told everything. The light, the being, the visions, the truth about Christ, not as a man of one world, but the essence of all creation. He spoke for hours, voice breaking, heart pouring into the recorder, until words gave way to silence. When he finished, he sat back, trembling. Then he uploaded the audio to every platform he could, his site, social media, cloud servers. He didn't care what happened next. For once, truth mattered more than survival. The following days blurred together. His story spread fast, viral within hours, dissected by skeptics, theologians, and conspiracy forums alike. News anchors called it the Cross Confession. Some called him insane, others a prophet. Churches condemned him, governments dismissed him, and yet millions listened. Something in his voice, raw, broken, sincere, stirred people in ways no sermon had. But with attention came danger. One night, as rain hissed against his window, a black car pulled up outside. Two men in suits got out, their faces pale and unreadable. Ethan's pulse quickened. They knocked once. Firm, official. He didn't answer. The knock came again. "Mr. Cross?" a voice called, calm but cold. "We'd like to discuss your recent publication. We have some questions." He backed away slowly, clutching the sphere. "Not tonight," he whispered. The lights in his apartment flickered, then went dark. A surge of panic shot through him. The sphere began to hum faintly in his hand. A whisper rose inside his head. Not human, not alien, but something both. "Do not fear. This is the unveiling." The men outside kept knocking. The hum grew louder until the walls vibrated. Then, without warning, the sphere ignited. A beam of light shot through the ceiling, piercing the clouds above. The men staggered back, shielding their eyes. Ethan dropped the sphere in shock, but it didn't fall. It hovered in the air, spinning faster, flooding the room with a radiance that dissolved shadows. Within it, he saw faces, human, angelic, alien, all merging into one luminous form. The voice that came from it was the same one that had spoken to him in the desert, but now it carried the thunder of eternity. "The time of remembering is here. Do not hide truth in fear. The future is light, and light cannot be silenced." Ethan fell to his knees, tears streaming. "What do you want from me?" he cried.
"Nothing," the voice said. "Only that you see." The light swelled, filling every corner of the room, then burst outward through the windows. Across the city, people looked up from their screens, their cars, their sleep, and saw it. A column of white fire rising into the heavens, pulsing like a heartbeat. For 3 full minutes, the sky above Los Angeles burned with living light. Then it vanished. The next morning, every news outlet in the world replayed the footage. Scientists blamed an atmospheric anomaly. Churches called it a sign. But millions felt something deeper, that something inside them had awakened, something ancient and beautiful. Ethan was gone, his apartment empty. Only the recorder remained, its final words untouched. "If you're hearing this," his voice said softly, "then you're part of it too."
The future isn't coming. It's remembering itself through us. Look for the light. You'll know it when you see it. Days later, hikers in Nevada found a truck abandoned near the desert ridge. Inside it, a single item lay on the seat, the grey sphere, now cracked open like an egg. From its center grew a faint golden light, pulsing softly, as if waiting for someone else to find it. Somewhere beyond the stars, a voice whispered into eternity. He remembered.